Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which YouTube is always right. Ah, 1984. It's an excellent book that was meant to be a warning, not a goal. Maybe someone should tell that to YouTube, since they seem to go out of their way to make George Orwell's novel a reality. The newest example is YouTube's revised woo-foo policy. Well, it's more like an ever-changing theory because it's totally inconsistent except for one thing. Whatever YouTube says is always right. You may remember that when the woo-flu started, YouTube banned people from naming the global pandemic because Pooh Bear or Skeletor told them so. Then you could say it, but you couldn't talk about any potential vaccines being produced for it, let alone any treatments because Orange Man bad. This was forbidden until Uncle Bad Touch jimmied his way into office. You couldn't talk about the masks for the same reason. YouTube said so. This applied even when the Lion Munchkin changed his mind about masks, along with the World Health Organization and the CDC. Now YouTube is extending this to the efficacy of vaccines because there's so-called harmful content, i.e. people asking questions, about vaccines on YouTube. Big Brother says, quote, crafting policy around medical misinformation comes charged with inherent challenges and trade-offs. Honesty versus lies, propaganda, and manipulation. Oh, it's so hard to choose. You're starting off by being dishonest. That never goes well, but okay, lie to me. Scientific understanding evolves as new research emerges, and first-hand personal experiences regularly play a powerful role in online discourse. But vaccines in particular have been a source of fierce debate over the years, despite consistent guidance from health authorities about their effectiveness. But today, we're expanding our medical misinformation policies on YouTube with new guidelines on currently administered vaccines that are approved and confirmed to be safe and effective by local health authorities and the WHO. Right. You just said first-hand personal experiences regularly play a powerful role in online discourse, and now you're talking about misinformation about vaccines. Are you suggesting that those first-hand experiences are untrue? What evidence do you have to support that? Isn't it possible for something to be approved and confirmed safe, yet have side effects that negatively impact users? Are you suggesting that they're not allowed to talk about that? Oh, YouTube isn't suggesting. They're flat out saying it, quote, our community guidelines already prohibit certain types of medical misinformation. We've long removed content that promotes harmful remedies, such as saying drinking turpentine can cure diseases. At the onset of COVID-19, we built on these policies when the pandemic hit and worked with experts to develop 10 new policies about COVID-19 and medical misinformation. Yes, by not allowing anyone to say the word COVID-19. We couldn't even talk about the thing that was happening because Dentures McGee was telling everyone to go to China. And when you look at the YouTube policy, it's full of contradictions. For example, it says that you're not allowed to make claims that there's a guaranteed prevention method for COVID-19, but then 13 lines down they say that you can't make claims that COVID-19 vaccines do not resist risk of contracting COVID-19. I'm sure the key word there is guarantee, but in the actual application of the policy, YouTube has removed videos about people who took the vaccine and still got the flu. Hell, they removed videos citing the CDC regarding the efficacy of the vaccines, so they're not even following their own policy. Don't take my word for it. Ask Young Rippa, whose videos have been flagged by YouTube for him literally reading from the CDC's website. They admit to removing over 130,000 videos for violating their policy, but again, we've seen them remove content that quotes the medical authorities they claim are the only ones people should listen to. Now they want to expand this. Quote, throughout this work, we learned important lessons about how to design and enforce nuanced medical misinformation policies at scale. Working closely with health authorities, we look to balance our commitment to an open platform with the need to remove egregious harmful content. We've steadily seen false claims about the coronavirus vaccine spill into misinformation about vaccines in general, and we're now at the point where it's more important than ever to expand the work we started with COVID-19 to other vaccines. Translation: people are skeptical about the vaccines, especially with the government-imposed mandates, so YouTube will silence all skepticism, lest anyone think for themselves. Quote, specifically, content that falsely alleges that approved vaccines are dangerous and cause chronic health effects, claims that vaccines do not reduce transmission or contraction of disease, or contains misinformation on the substances contained in vaccines will be removed. It'd be helpful if you provided an example of what you're talking about. What vaccines are people claiming are dangerous and cause chronic health issues? What vaccines are they claiming don't reduce the transmission or contraction of diseases? What vaccines are they claiming contain substances that they don't? When you say, quote, this would include content that falsely says that approved vaccines cause autism, cancer, or infertility. Is there any evidence that this has happened with any vaccine? If you can't answer no and can't provide evidence to back that up, why are you prohibiting the question? Is there some reason you don't want people to ask questions about what they put into their bodies, especially when it's being enforced by government mandate? As for this bit, quote, our policies not only include specific routine immunizations like for measles or hepatitis B, but also apply to general statements about vaccines. Right. So what are people saying about the measles and hepatitis B vaccines? And what are these general statements about vaccines? You're being very vague, which makes it impossible to know what you're actually removing. You could show an example of something in context that falls under this policy so people understand what you're targeting. But saying something like general statements about vaccines is so nebulous that it can mean anything. And we're supposed to assume you're going to be honest, even though you literally blocked people from calling the virus by its name for nearly a year. Big Brother continues, quote, as with our COVID guidelines, we consulted with local and international health organizations and experts in developing these policies. Would these be the same authorities who told people they didn't need to wear masks, then that they did, then that they needed to, then that one was fine, then that cloth masks weren't as effective, then that they were, then that people needed a double mask again, and now that even with the vaccine they still need to wear a mask? For example, our new guidance on vaccine side effects maps to public vaccine resources provided by health authorities and backed by medical consensus. Ah, that's interesting because you didn't provide a link to it, and I couldn't find any such reference on my own. Who are these health authorities? And what's backed by medical consensus? And again, would these be the same people who contradicted themselves over the last 2 years? Are they incapable of being wrong? We move on, quote, there are important exceptions to our new guidelines. I haven't heard a lot of bullshit that obvious since Uncle Bad Touch took the oath of office. Given the importance of public discussion and debate to the scientific process, we will continue to allow content about vaccine policies, new vaccine trials, and historical vaccine successes and failures on YouTube. This issue, our policies not only cover specific routine immunizations like for measles and hepatitis B. Personal testimonies relating to vaccines will also be allowed. This also you? But also applies to general statements about vaccines. So long as the video doesn't violate community guidelines, or the channel doesn't show a pattern of promoting vaccine hesitancy. I've never seen someone argue like a lawyer, communist, capitalist, and politician at the same time. Until now. Bitch, either we can ask questions about vaccines or we can't. You can't have it both ways. How can someone talk about their personal experiences with vaccines or their willingness to take them if you're barring specific and generalized statements about vaccines? How can you speak freely and be silent at the same time? Of course, that's only in the negative. You'll notice that YouTube doesn't bar any claim about the positive effect of vaccines, no matter how ridiculous. It's almost like there's an agenda. The irony is that there's nothing you can do about this. Google is a private company. They set the rules for using their platform YouTube, even though the federal protections afforded to them state that people should be free to say whatever they want. It's almost like when a corporation isn't answerable to anyone and they manage to corner the market with a given product, they can do whatever they want, including curtail your free speech. Now, I was told by people with dizzying intellects that the system the corporations work within would prevent this kind of abuse because if they screwed over their customers, people would make an alternative platform and the corporation would fail. And what other personalized video service is as big as YouTube? Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh sure, you can go to some smaller platform nobody uses so you can say whatever you want to empty space. Hell, if enough people did use it, it could get bigger, prompting Big Brother Google to buy out their competition for a few piddly million bucks that they were going to throw away anyway. And if the other company refused, Google could just shadow ban their site from their search engine. You know, the world's most popular search engine, Google. This type of situation is exactly why you need some policy in place to protect people's rights when companies entrench themselves into the social fabric and then start becoming authoritarians. This isn't just about YouTube videos, but about the power Google wields, specifically the company's ability to control what you see, hear, and read, with you having little ability to do anything about it. They're at the point that, by their own admission, they can manipulate elections. You shouldn't trust corporations with this kind of power, and remember, they're not answerable to you. At least a politician can be removed from office. You can't just stop using these services because too much of the social, political, and economic landscape function using them. We really need to think about how much power we're going to allow these social media companies to have, and what we're going to do to protect our rights when these clowns decide to violate them. Going somewhere else isn't an option. We saw what they did to Parler, where they colluded with each other to take out a competitor. It doesn't matter their reasoning or even how they did it. That they did it should frighten you, because that road leads to this type of shit here, where they're literally telling you that you're not allowed to talk about your own experiences or question what they deem to be right. Keep this up, and it won't be long until you gaze up at that enormous logo. Years is taking you to learn what kind of smile is hidden beneath that red maw. Oh cruel, needless misunderstanding. Oh stubborn, self-willed exile from the loving breast. 2 salt-drenched tears will trickle down the sides of your nose, but it's alright. Everything's alright. The struggle is finished. You've won the victory over yourself. You love YouTube. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.